If you had asked me a year ago, I would have said my life was stable, not extraordinary, not dramatic, but comfortably quiet. I lived with my boyfriend Daniel in a sunlit apartment that always smelled faintly of coffee and his cologne. We'd been together for 5 years. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our shared playlists that filled the silence between us. That night felt like any other Friday. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, clasping a simple gold bracelet around my wrist. Daniel stood in front of the mirror, fixing the collar of his shirt. The sound of traffic outside mixed with the faint jazz humming from our speaker. It was domestic, almost cinematic in its normalcy. Then he spoke. It was almost casual, too casual for the weight it carried. "Every time I see you," he said, adjusting his watch without looking at me, "I wonder if this is really the best I can do." At first I thought I misheard. The sentence floated in the air like smoke, absurd and shapeless. What I asked, waiting for him to laugh, to say it was sarcasm. But Daniel just glanced at me in the mirror, his tone flat. "Relax. It's just a thought I have sometimes." A thought he has sometimes. I smiled, or maybe I grimaced. I honestly couldn't tell. My heartbeat was in my ears, and suddenly everything around me felt staged, artificial. The framed photo of us in Santorini, the candle flickering on the nightstand, all props in a story I thought we were writing together. He grabbed his keys, checking his reflection again. "You ready to go? We're going to be late." I didn't answer. I just followed him out like a ghost walking through the remnants of her own life. The party was a blur of laughter and light, the kind that forces you to smile even when your stomach is twisting. Daniel was magnetic as usual, shaking hands, telling stories. Everyone loved him. I watched him from across the room, the way his eyes darted when a woman in a red dress laughed too loud at his joke. "Every time I see you," the phrase looped endlessly, poisoning everything it touched. I tried to laugh when someone complimented my dress, tried to sip my drink without shaking. But every glance Daniel gave someone else felt like confirmation of what he'd said, that I was a placeholder, a comfortable option, until something better appeared. When he turned to refill his glass, I whispered almost to myself, "I need to go." He frowned. "Now. We just got here. I have a headache." The lie came easily. He shrugged, already looking away. "Okay, whatever. I'll get an Uber later." That was it. No concern, no attempt to come with me. Just a dismissive flick of his hand before he returned to the crowd. I walked out alone, heels clicking against the marble floor, each step louder than the music fading behind me. The night air outside was cool and heavy. By the time I reached home, my hands were trembling, not from anger, but from a clarity I'd never felt before. It was the clarity that comes after a storm when everything broken finally lies still. Our apartment looked exactly as we'd left it an hour earlier, candles unlit, bed neatly made. Except now it wasn't ours. It was a stage set after the final curtain. I opened the closet. The scent of his shirts, that warm, woody aftershave, made my stomach twist. I pulled down my suitcase from the top shelf and began to pack. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I folded clothes with mechanical precision: jeans, sweaters, the worn t-shirt I loved sleeping in. I left behind the perfume he bought me for my birthday, the one he said finally made you smell sophisticated. In the kitchen, I paused at the counter, staring at the small stack of postcards we'd collected from trips together. Venice, Tokyo, New York, all the places we thought defined us. They didn't. They were souvenirs of a version of me that had accepted less than I deserved. I found a notepad and wrote a few lines, my pen gliding calmly across the paper. "Daniel, I heard you. You deserve to find the best. I won't stand in your way. Lauren." I placed my apartment key on top of the note. The soft click of metal on stone sounded final. As I stood at the door, suitcase in hand, I took one last look at the room, at the bed, where we once whispered promises, at the vanity he'd built for me, at the framed photo, smiling back with lies. For the first time in 5 years, I realized I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid of staying. The door closed behind me with a quiet thud. And just like that, the life I thought was mine ended, not with a fight, but with a sentence spoken too easily by a man who didn't know its cost. The first thing I noticed after leaving was the silence. Not the comfortable, sleepy kind that used to fill our Sunday mornings. This was sharper, like standing at the edge of an empty canyon and realizing the echo you're waiting for will never come back. I checked into a motel off the highway, the kind that pretends to be comforting with floral bedspreads and humming air conditioners. The man at the counter didn't even look up as he handed me the key. Room 107. Perfect. Anonymous. Inside, I dropped my bag on the carpet and sat on the bed. The mattress squeaked, the only sound in the world. I stared at the ceiling, the cheap paint bubbling slightly near the light fixture. My phone vibrated. Daniel, are you seriously just gone? You're being so dramatic. My Uber's here. We need to talk when I get home. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I opened his contact, scrolled to the bottom, and pressed block this caller. The confirmation popped up. Are you sure? Yes. For the first time that night, I smiled. The days after that bled together: motel coffee, long showers, staring at the beige curtains, while traffic roared outside. I thought I'd feel relief or maybe grief. Instead, I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped everything out of me and left the shell sitting upright. But that hollowness, it was quiet, peaceful even. A week later, I found a small studio apartment online. One room, no balcony, just a square of blank walls and a kitchenette the size of a closet. The listing said no pets, no smoking, no drama. I signed it immediately. Moving in was both absurd and sacred. My single suitcase looked lost in the middle of the empty floor. I bought a mattress and a folding chair. That was it. No framed photos, no scented candles, no souvenirs of who I used to be. When I turned the key that first night, the air smelled new, not like fresh paint, but like freedom. I filled my time with small, deliberate routines: morning runs, cheap instant noodles, laundry every Tuesday. I worked late at the office, partly to distract myself, partly because there was something intoxicating about controlling at least one part of my life. My boss, Rachel, noticed. You've been focused lately, she said. I am, I replied. Finally. It wasn't a lie. Work became my sanctuary. Lines of code behaved predictably. Deadlines made sense. Unlike people, systems didn't say cruel things without realizing their weight. At night, when the world outside quieted, I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling again. Same position, different silence. But now it didn't feel suffocating. It felt like mine. A month passed before the first message came. From Maya, a mutual friend. Hey, haven't seen you in forever. Daniel mentioned you just disappeared. What happened? He seems really torn up. I reread it twice. It was almost funny how quickly narratives rearrange themselves. Torn up. He'd told me I was the best he could do. He'd meant it. I typed back slowly, each word deliberate. He expressed that he could do better. I agreed with him and left. I'd prefer not to discuss it further. A few seconds later, the three dots appeared, then vanished. Conversation over. I placed the phone face down on the table and exhaled. It was such a small act, but it felt like power, power wrapped in silence. The next week, I found a little cafe near my apartment that became my safe place. It was small, tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore, always smelling of cinnamon and espresso. The owner, a quiet woman named Lena, learned my order by the third visit: black coffee, no sugar. Rough day, she asked once. Not really, I said, then thought about it. Just recalibrating. She smiled, a knowing sort of smile that told me she'd seen people like me before, the ones rebuilding after implosion. And that's what it was: reconstruction. Every small action blocking his number. Choosing my coffee, coming home to an empty room, was a brick in the foundation of someone new. Then came the second message, this time from Jess, another mutual friend closer to Daniel. Lauren, we need to talk. He's really hurting. He said you misunderstood what he meant. It was just something he said out of stress. I stared at the screen, then typed back. People don't reveal what they don't feel when they think no one's listening. He said what he meant. I heard him. I didn't wait for a reply. I muted the thread. Outside, rain began to fall against the window, soft, rhythmic cleansing. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel fragile. I felt composed. The ache was still there, but smaller now, contained within boundaries I could name. I realized healing didn't look like forgetting. It looked like remembering without collapsing. That night, I stood by the window of my apartment, holding a mug of tea. The reflection staring back at me in the glass didn't look like someone abandoned. She looked like someone who had finally escaped. The silence around me was no longer absence. It was peace. It was the sound of nothing, and it was beautiful. Silence, I learned, isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of need. By the second month, I'd built an entire world out of it. My studio had become a cocoon soft lamplight, a single plant on the windowsill, a hum from the city below. I'd started reading again, cooking again, existing again. And then, like clockwork, the past came knocking. It started with an email, no subject line, No greeting. Just a block of text from an unfamiliar address. Lauren, I know you don't want to hear from me. I just need you to know I'm sorry. What I said was cruel and stupid. It wasn't true. You're the best person I've ever known. I've been a mess since you left. Please, just coffee. 5 minutes. Please. Daniel. I read it once. Then I copied the entire thing, pasted it into a new document, and titled it Closure. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I finally understood something people only apologize when the silence starts to scare them. I archived the email and closed my laptop. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Hi, Lauren. This is Laura Daniel's cousin. I know this is random, but he's not doing well. He's been staying with us. He barely eats, barely sleeps. He really regrets what he said. I know you don't owe him anything, but maybe just a text. It might help him move on. The words were heavy with guilt, carefully chosen to sound compassionate. I could almost hear Daniel dictating them. I typed back calmly. Hi, Laura. I appreciate your concern. While I wish Daniel well, any contact between us wouldn't be healthy. I hope he finds the support he needs. Then I blocked her number. The silence afterward felt sacred. But the world is small when pain is shared between two people. A few days later, Maya from work, the same friend who'd texted before, stopped by my desk at lunch. Hey, she said softly. Don't get mad, but I saw Daniel last weekend. He looked bad. He said he can't believe you just walked away. He's been going to therapy, apparently. I smiled faintly. Good. Therapy's useful. She hesitated. He said he still loves you. I put my coffee cup down very gently, as if setting down something fragile. Then he should tell his therapist that. Maya blinked, unsure whether to laugh or apologize. You're really not going to talk to him? No, I said, because there's nothing left to say. And there wasn't. The story was already finished, he just refused to accept the ending. That night, I walked home in the rain. The city lights blurred against the wet pavement, turning everything gold and soft. I thought about the first time Daniel and I kissed the same kind of rain, the same smell of wet concrete. For a fleeting moment, nostalgia tried to crawl back in. But nostalgia is just grief with good lighting. I let the memory fade and kept walking. A week later, another message appeared, this time through Instagram DMs from someone I didn't recognize. The username was private. It took only a second to realize it was Rachel Daniels' ex from years ago. Hey, I know we don't know each other, but Daniel's a good guy. People make mistakes. You don't have to punish him forever. Life's too short to hold grudges. I actually laughed out loud. The irony was exquisite, the ex-girlfriend defending him to the woman he belittled. I didn't reply. Instead, I screenshot the message, saved it to the closure folder, and moved on. That folder was starting to fill up. Apologies, excuses, emotional pleas, all variations of the same song. Come back so I can feel better about what I did. I didn't realize it then, but keeping those files was my way of turning pain into evidence proof that I wasn't crazy, that his cruelty had existed spoken in writing pixel by pixel. Every day that I didn't respond, I felt stronger. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't pride. It was clarity. Silence had become my form of language, clean, unambiguous, unanswerable. One night, as I brushed my hair before bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror and realized I didn't look like her anymore, the woman who used to wait for text messages, who used to shrink under the weight of someone else's words. I looked centered, steady, whole. The final message came on a Sunday morning. I was making pancakes, the window open, music playing softly. My phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. No caller ID. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity, that stubborn old ghost, won for just a second. I pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the kitchen, slurred, broken. Lauren, please pick up. I know you're there. I'm at the old apartment. It still smells like you sometimes. I can't do this. You can't just erase me. You were supposed to fight for us. You were supposed to prove me wrong. You think your silence makes you strong. It just makes you heartless. His voice cracked, then shifted from pleading to fury. You're a coward, Lauren. You think you're better than me now. You're not. You'll always be cold, alone. The message ended with a hollow click. I stood there for a moment, spatula in hand, the pancakes starting to burn. Then I picked up my phone, saved the voicemail, and dropped it into the closure folder. I turned off the stove, opened the window wider, and let the cool air wash through the room. It smelled like rain again, but this time it didn't hurt. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anything at all, and that I realized was freedom. It's strange how peace feels at first. It doesn't arrive like light flooding into a dark room. It seeps in quietly when you stop begging the darkness to explain itself. After I listened to Daniel's voicemail, something inside me shifted. Not broken, not mended, just finally done. For years, I'd been holding on to the belief that love had to be painful to be real. But standing there in my kitchen watching smoke curl from a burnt pancake, I realized something else pain doesn't prove love. It only proves endurance. I spent the rest of that Sunday cleaning. Not as therapy, not in that cinematic cleansing way people talk about, but because it felt practical, honest. I scrubbed the floor, washed my sheets, threw out the perfume he'd bought me years ago. The bottle was half full, its scent still sharp and expensive. I poured it down the drain, watching the clear liquid spiral away. It felt symbolic, but also mercifully mundane. I had a life now, small, quiet, and fully mine. The following week at work, we launched a new campaign. My name was on the presentation slide in bold. When my manager introduced me to the client, he said Lauren is the reason this project exists. I smiled genuinely. I hadn't realized how good it felt to be seen for something I'd built myself. Later that day, I caught my reflection in the glass wall of the conference room. My posture was straighter, my eyes clearer. For the first time in years, I didn't look like someone waiting to be chosen. But the past has a way of testing its own exit. That evening, as I walked home, my phone buzzed again. Another email. This one longer. Subject line, please. Lauren, I know you've blocked me everywhere. This is the only way I could reach you. I just want to explain. I never meant to hurt you. That night, I was stressed and insecure. I thought saying something harsh would protect me from feeling small. It was stupid. Everything's been empty without you. I'm trying to be better, I swear. I just need to see you once. I'll wait at our spot tomorrow after work. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Daniel. I read it twice, not out of curiosity, but to measure how much it no longer affected me. Nothing moved. No nostalgia, no tremor of sympathy. I copied the message into the closure file and closed my laptop. There was something beautifully simple about being unmoved. The next day came and went. I didn't go to our spot. I didn't check if he was waiting. Instead, I went to yoga after work. The instructor spoke softly, her voice steady as we moved through each pose. Let the thoughts come, she said, but let them pass too. Don't chase them. As I lay on the mat during the final pose, eyes closed, I felt the ghost of Daniel's voice fade somewhere far in the distance, like a train leaving a station I'd already left behind. When I walked out, the sky was dusky gold, the kind of color that feels like forgiveness. A few weeks later, a message arrived from Rachel Yes, that Rachel, the ex-girlfriend who'd once reached out to me on social media. Hey Lauren, I heard Daniel's leaving town. Said he's starting over. Just thought you'd want to know. He still talks about you a lot. He's really changed. I didn't reply. Some stories don't need epilogues, they just need distance. I archived her message with the rest, then opened a new document. For the first time, not to store evidence, but to write something for myself. Closure isn't a door slamming shut. It's realizing the lock was on your side the whole time. I saved the line, closed my laptop, and laughed quietly to myself. It felt good to hear my own voice again, not through anger, not through grief, but through clarity. One night, the phone rang again, a blocked number. My heart didn't race this time. I let it go to voicemail, curiosity, no longer a weapon against my peace. The message was short, almost a whisper. Lauren, I'm sorry. For real this time. You were right to leave. And then silence, not the pleading kind, not angry, just still. I deleted it. I didn't save it to the closure folder. That folder wasn't for me anymore. It was for the version of me that needed proof. And she didn't need it now. I went for a walk afterward. The city lights shimmered across puddles from an earlier rain. Everything smelled faintly metallic, the scent of wet pavement and possibility. Somewhere between one step and the next, I realized that I wasn't walking away from Daniel anymore. I was simply walking. By the time I got home, my reflection in the mirror looked almost unfamiliar, softer yet certain. The kind of woman who doesn't need to be the best for someone else because she's already enough for herself. That night, I made tea, opened my window, and sat quietly watching the city move below me. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't just peaceful. It was powerful. It was mine. By the time spring arrived, my life had texture again. It wasn't dramatic or dazzling, but it was mine. I'd started running by the river every morning before work, eating breakfast by the window, taking long showers with music playing loud enough to fill the space where silence used to ache. The past had become background noise, faint, distant, harmless. Then one Thursday it walked right up to me. It was the day of my company's biggest presentation, the annual Digital Futures Conference. Dozens of startups, executives, and clients packed the grand ballroom of the Marriott. My team had worked for weeks on our demo, and I'd been chosen to present. When I stepped on stage, lights washed over me. Too bright, too white, but my hands didn't shake. Not anymore. I spoke with confidence, each slide unfolding like a quiet victory. All those nights alone, all that silence, all that rebuilding, it had led me here. When the applause came, it was genuine. For the first time in years, I didn't crave anyone's validation but my own. Afterward, people approached to shake my hand, exchange cards, compliment the presentation. I smiled small and sincere. The hum of conversation filled the air like soft static. And then that voice. Lauren, two syllables enough to pull the air right out of the room. I turned. There he was. Daniel. He stood a few feet away, awkward, in a suit that didn't fit quite right, clutching a lanyard like he'd snuck in. His hair was shorter, his face leaner, but the nervous energy was the same. For a strange, suspended moment, I felt nothing. No surge of pain, no racing pulse, just an awareness, like recognizing a photograph from a life I once lived. Lauren, he said again with a breathless little laugh. Oh my God, you look incredible. I didn't move. Hello, Daniel. He blinked as though surprised I wasn't either furious or trembling. I didn't know you'd be here, he said. A friend had a ticket. I saw your name on the program and, well, I just had to see you speak. You were amazing. Thank you, I replied. The tone was polite, like thanking a waiter for refilling a glass of water. He hesitated, shifting the lanyard between his fingers. Can we talk just for a few minutes? I looked around the ballroom. The chatter, the soft clink of glasses, the faint scent of coffee and cologne, all these small details of a world I now belonged to. A world that had nothing to do with him. There's nothing to talk about, I said gently. His face twitched. Please don't do that. Not here. I've changed, Lauren. I've been in therapy. I finally understand how much I hurt you. What I said that night, I didn't mean it. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle how much I loved you. I met his eyes, calm, unflinching. You did mean it, I said softly, and you were right. He frowned. What? You said you wondered if I was the best you could do. I paused. Turns out you weren't the best I could do either. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. For once, the silence wasn't heavy. It was absolute. He tried to recover. Lauren, please. Don't throw away what we had. We were good together. We had plans, remember? The trips, the jokes, I raised a hand, stopping him. Daniel, I said, you're talking to a woman who no longer exists. She loved you. She waited for you to notice her worth. But I buried her the night you called her the best you could do. A murmur passed through nearby tables. I didn't care. There was no drama in my voice, no tremor, just truth. His composure cracked. Desperation replaced charm. You can't just erase 5 years. I didn't erase them, I said. I learned from them. For a moment I saw something flicker behind his eyes, maybe regret, maybe recognition. But it was too late. Whatever apology he'd rehearsed, whatever redemption he was searching for, it didn't belong to me anymore. I picked up my portfolio and smiled faintly. I have to get back to my team. Lauren, he said, his voice breaking, please. I looked at him one last time, not as the man who hurt me, not as the ghost who haunted me, but as a stranger who had once known my favorite coffee order. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, but I'm not it. Then I walked away. As I stepped into the hallway, I felt something I hadn't expected, not pride, not revenge, but peace. The clean, quiet kind that doesn't demand witnesses. When the elevator doors closed, I caught my reflection in the metal calm eyes, steady breathing posture, straight. There was no trembling this time, just stillness, strength, freedom. The city lights greeted me. Outside, 1,000 tiny suns reflected in glass towers. The night air smelled sharp and electric, and somewhere deep inside me, a final thread snapped loose and disappeared into the wind. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying him with me. I was carrying myself. It's been a year since that night at the conference. A full rotation of seasons, rain, heat, wind, stillness. And not once did I hear his voice again. Not in messages, not in dreams, not even in memory, the way it used to haunt the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. Sometimes I still think about the moment he said those words. I wonder if this is really the best I can do. But the memory feels like a distant movie scene now, one I've watched too many times to still care about the ending. I live alone in a small apartment with tall windows and a balcony that overlooks the river. Every morning, the light spills in across the hardwood floor, and I make coffee the same brand I used to buy for us. But it tastes different now. It tastes like peace. People ask me sometimes if I ever think about dating again. I tell them I'm not against it. I just stopped needing it to feel whole. It took me years to understand that solitude isn't a punishment, it's an earned privilege. I've learned to fill my space with things that don't talk back: books, plants, music, sunlight. And somehow those things love me better than he ever did. A few weeks ago, while sorting through old files on my laptop, I found the closure folder. The one filled with all those emails, screenshots, and voicemails, artifacts from a life I'd outgrown. I hovered my cursor over it for a moment, then pressed delete. No hesitation, no ceremony, just one quiet click. The computer made a small sound of confirmation, a soft digital sigh. And just like that, the weight was gone. That night, I sat on my balcony as the city shimmered below 1,000 windows glowing against the dark. The air was cool, the river steady. Somewhere out there, I imagined Daniel might be walking another street building, another story with someone new. I didn't feel anger or longing, only gratitude, because without him, I might have never learned what silence can teach. Silence isn't empty, it's full of answers that only arrive once the noise is gone. I used to think closure came from confrontation, from one last talk, one last apology, one final moment where both people see eye to eye. But that's not how real healing works. Closure isn't granted, it's chosen. It's waking up one morning and realizing you didn't think about them yesterday and not remembering when that started. It's when you look at the mirror and finally see only yourself, not who you were when you loved them, not who you became after they broke you, just you, uncompromised, unapologetic, whole. If you ask me now what I'd say to Daniel if I saw him again, I think I'd simply smile and wish him well, not because he deserves it, but because I do. I built my peace from the wreckage he left behind, brick by brick, word by word, silence by silence. And in that silence, I built a fortress, not one that keeps love out, but one that keeps my worth in. So here I am, 33 now, still waking up by the river, still drinking my coffee black, still choosing quiet over chaos. I don't need a grand ending or a cinematic twist. Sometimes the most powerful story is the one where the woman simply walks away and never looks back. Because survival isn't loud, it's steady. And peace, when you finally find it, doesn't announce